the foreman told her she would never work a roundup, the trail boss put her on lead ride. Her name was Dinah Crace, and she was 29 years old, and she could ride better than most men in Beartooth Montana territory, which was not a statement of pride but a statement of fact, the fact established by years of riding since she was 6, riding on her father's ranch until her father died, riding on her uncle's ranch until her uncle sold it, riding on whatever ranch would hire her, which was the problem, because the problem was that ranches did not hire women to ride. Ranches hired women to cook and to wash and to mend, and cooking and washing and mending were not what Dinah did. What Dinah did was ride, and riding was the skill, and the skill was unwanted because the skill was in a woman. She lived in a room above the feed store, a room that cost $2 a week and that contained a cot and a washstand and a window that looked out over the main street of Beartooth. The looking out, the watching. And the watching was the daily ritual of a woman who saw men ride to work every morning on horses, no better than hers, riding to jobs she could do better than they could, and the seeing was the injustice, and the injustice was the hunger not for food, but for the chance to do the thing she was made to do, and the made to do was the calling, and the calling was unanswered. She took whatever work she could find. She broke horses for Alton at the livery, $3 a head, the breaking the only riding work available to her, because breaking was the work that men did not want, the not wanting, because breaking was dangerous, and the dangerous was the undesirable, and the undesirable was the opening, and the opening was small, but it was hers, and hers was the only category of work she had. She had applied to the Garfield Cattle Company in April. She had applied because the Garfield Cattle Company was running a spring roundup, and the spring roundup required riders, and Dinah was a rider. And the applying was the asking, and the asking was the hope, and the hope was that someone would see the skill and not the skirt, and someone did not. The foreman's name was Ott Kessler. He was a square man with a square jaw and square opinions, and his square opinion about women on Roundup was that women did not belong on Roundup, the not belonging a category as fixed and permanent in Ott Kessler's mind as the categories of weather. Rain is wet, snow is cold, women do not ride Roundup, and the fixedness was the wall, and the wall was what Dinah hit when she stood in front of Ott Kessler and said she wanted to ride. "You will never work a Roundup," Ott said. He said it the way a man says a fact about geography, flatly, without malice, but without room. The without room, the cruelty. Because cruelty is not always anger. Cruelty is sometimes the calm denial of a person's capacity. And the calm denial was what Ott offered, and the offering was the closing of the door, and the door was closed. Dinah did not argue. She did not argue because arguing with Ott Kessler was the arguing with weather that accomplishes nothing, and nothing was what arguing would produce, and producing nothing was the waste of time, and time was what Dinah did not have, because time was money, and money was the thing Dinah needed, and needing was the condition of her life. The condition being that she was a woman, alone in Beartooth Montana territory, with a horse and a saddle, and a skill that no one would buy. The trail boss's name was Ransom Hughes. He was 41 years old. He had been running cattle drives and roundups for 18 years, across Montana and Wyoming and the Dakotas, and the running was the experience, and the experience was the authority, and the authority was quiet. Quiet the way deep water is quiet. The depth, the knowledge, the competence that does not need to announce itself, because competence is visible in the doing, and Ransom's doing was visible in the way he sat a horse, and the way he read terrain, and the way he managed men, the managing not by shouting, but by deciding, and the deciding was the leadership, and the leadership was the thing that made the Garfield Cattle Company's roundups successful. Ransom had heard about Dinah. He had heard because Beartooth was a small town, and small towns circulate information the way rivers circulate water. Constantly, inevitably, the circulation the gossip, and the gossip the knowledge. And the knowledge was that a woman had asked to ride Roundup, and that Ott Kessler had said no. And the no was the talk of the bunkhouse, the talk being laughter, the laughter being the dismissal that men perform when a woman enters a space that men consider theirs. And the dismissal was the sound of the wall, and the wall was the thing Ransom heard, and the hearing was the question, and the question was, is the wall correct? He had his own reasons for questioning the wall. His mother had been a rancher, a woman who ran 200 head on the Judith River after his father's death, a woman who rode and roped and branded and did every task the ranch required, and the every task was the evidence that Ransom had grown up with, the evidence that said, the wall is wrong, the wall is custom, not capacity, and custom is the thing that changes when someone with authority decides it should change, and authority was what Ransom had, and deciding was what Ransom did. Ransom found Dinah at the livery stable. She was brushing her horse, a buckskin mare named Grit, and the brushing was the care, and the care was visible in the horse's condition, the coat gleaming, the hooves clean, the tack maintained, with the particular attention that distinguishes a rider who respects the animal from a rider who merely uses it, and the distinguishing was the evidence, and the evidence was what Ransom was looking for. I heard you want to ride Roundup, Ransom said. I want to work. Roundup is the work I do best. Your foreman said no. My foreman said no, because my foreman has opinions. I have questions. Can you rope? I can rope. Can you cut? I can cut. Can you hold a herd at night without losing stock? I have held herds at night since I was 14. I have not lost stock. Ransom looked at the horse. He looked at the tack. He looked at Dinah's hands, the hands calloused from rains. The calluses the evidence of years. The years the qualification that no amount of opinion can erase. Report to the staging ground at dawn. You are on lead ride. Lead ride. Not drag, where the new hands ate dust at the back of the herd. Not flank, where the middling riders held the sides. Lead ride, where the best riders worked the front the position of trust. The trust the assignment that said, I believe you can do this. And the believing was the opening. And the opening was the door that Ott Kessler had closed and that Ransom Hughes had opened. And the opening was not charity. The opening was assessment, and the assessment was based on evidence, and the evidence was the horse and the hands and the answers. Ott Kessler was not pleased. Ott Kessler was the opposite of pleased. The opposite being the anger that a man feels when his authority is overridden, and the overriding was the insult. And the insult was not that Dinah would ride, but that Ransom had decided without consulting Ott, and the without consulting was the message, and the message was, your opinion on this matter is not the deciding opinion, and the not deciding was the diminishment, and the diminishment was the fuel for what came next. What came next was the sabotage. The sabotage was not dramatic. It was the quiet cruelty of a man who cannot openly defy his boss, but who can make the defied thing difficult, and the difficult was the daily campaign against Dinah, the campaign consisting of the small hostilities that accumulate into misery. The wrong assignments relayed through subordinates, the cinch on her spare saddle loosened when she was not looking, the water barrel emptied before her turn, the comments made within earshot but not to her face, the comments the erosion, the wearing down, that is the strategy of men who cannot win the argument and so attempt to win the attrition. Dinah endured. She endured because enduring was the skill that women on the frontier develop alongside the other skills, the riding and the roping and the cutting, and the enduring was the persistence, and the persistence was the refusal to give Ott Kessler the satisfaction of the quitting that he wanted, and the wanting was visible in his face every time Dinah rode past him, the face the map of the frustration, and the frustration was the evidence that the enduring was working, and the working was the winning, and the winning was quiet. Ransom noticed. Ransom noticed because a trail boss notices the way a captain notices, the noticing the vigilance the responsibility, the watching of everything that leadership requires. He noticed the loosened cinch. He noticed the empty water barrel. He noticed the comments. He noticed the pattern, and the pattern was Ott Kessler, and the pattern was the cruelty, and the cruelty was the thing Ransom would not allow. He did not confront Ott publicly. He confronted Ott at the chuck wagon, at dusk, when the hands were settling, and the privacy was possible. The cinch on her spare saddle was loosened. The water barrel was empty before her turn. You have been making her work harder than any hand on this roundup, and she has done the work anyway, and the doing it anyway is the proof that she belongs, and the proof should be sufficient for you. But I see that the proof is not sufficient, and so I will provide a different kind of proof. If I find one more act of interference, you will finish this roundup as a hand, not a foreman, and the finishing as a hand will be the consequence, and the consequence will be permanent. Ott said nothing. The nothing was the understanding that Ransom was not bluffing, the not bluffing visible in the voice that was not raised, the not raised the signal of a man who does not need volume because he has authority, and authority is louder than volume. The sabotage stopped. The stopping was not the end of Ott's resentment, but the end of Ott's expression of resentment, the expression contained by the consequence the bottle, and the bottle held. Dinah learned what Ransom had done. She learned because one of the hands, a young rider named Polly, told her, because Polly admired her riding, and because admiration loosens tongues. And the loosened tongue produced the story, and the story was Ransom at the chuck wagon, and the chuck wagon was the protection, and the protection was the kindness, and the kindness was the thing Dinah had not expected. She found Ransom at the remuda, checking horses for the next day's work, the checking the care, the attention that a good trail boss gives to the animals that make the work possible. Polly told me what you said to Kessler. Polly talks too much. You did not have to do that. I can handle Kessler. I know you can handle Kessler. Handling Kessler is not the point. The point is that Kessler should not need to be handled. The point is that a rider who does her work well should not have to also do the work of surviving her foreman's cruelty, and the also doing is the unfairness, and unfairness is the thing I will not run on my roundup. Dinah looked at Ransom. She looked at him with the looking that is the reassessment of a man she had classified as fair, and who she was now reclassifying as something more than fair. The something more, being the thing that does not have a single word, the thing that is fairness plus protection, plus the willingness to spend authority on behalf of someone who has no authority. And the willingness is the generosity, and the generosity is the character, and the character was Ransom. The roundup lasted 3 weeks. In those 3 weeks, Dinah rode lead every day, and she did not lose stock, and she did not miss a cut, and she did not fail at any task. And the not failing was the evidence, and the evidence was cumulative, and the cumulative was the reputation, and the reputation was the thing that replaced the laughter in the bunkhouse with the respect that replaces laughter when laughter is proven wrong. Ransom watched her ride. He watched her the way a man watches a thing he admires, with the attention that is not supervisory but appreciative. The appreciative, the recognition of excellence, and excellence is the quality that transcends category, the category being gender, the gender being the wall that Ott Kessler had built and that Dinah had ridden over, and the riding over was the demolition, and the demolition was beautiful. By the second week, the other hands had stopped noticing that Dinah was a woman, and had started noticing that Dinah was the rider who always brought the strays in first, the first bringing the competence, and competence erases category, the way water erases chalk, and the erasing was the acceptance, and the acceptance was the thing Dinah had worked her entire life to earn, and the earning was the doing, and the doing was the proof that Ransom had been right to open the door. Ransom and Dinah rode together on the long pushes. They rode side by side across the Beartooth Plateau, the landscape of their growing conversation. The conversation, the thing that happens between two people who share a skill, and who discover that the shared skill is the bridge between strangers, and the bridge was being crossed, one conversation at a time, 1 mile at a time, the miles adding up the way spokes add up in a wheel, until the wheel is complete, and the complete is the connection. On the last night of the roundup, Ransom sat beside Dinah at the fire. He sat beside her, because sitting beside her was the proximity that he wanted, and wanting was the admission, and the admission was the thing he had not said. The not said, the restraint of a man who is the boss, and who knows that the boss cannot pursue a hand without the pursuing being the pressure, and pressure was the thing Ransom would not apply. Will you ride the fall roundup? Ransom said. If you will have me, I will have you. I will have you on lead ride, and I will have you on every roundup I run. And the having you is not the favor, the having you is the sense. Because you are the best rider I have, and the best is the qualification, and the qualification is the only thing that matters. Dinah smiled. The smile was the answer, and the answer was the beginning of the thing that a trail boss and a rider build when the building is mutual respect, and mutual respect is the foundation, and the foundation is the first board of the floor, and the floor is the house, and the house is the life. And the life was being offered, not with words of love, but with words of work, because work is the language of the frontier, and the frontier is where Dinah and Ransom lived, and living is the loving, and the loving was beginning, the way all true things begin on the frontier, quietly, without ceremony, between two people who have earned each other.